Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Senate Committee on Growth and Infrastructure. I'll go ahead and call the committee to order. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Senator Hammond. Senator Hansen.
Here.
Senator Pizzina. Present. Senator Spearman. Chair Harris.
Here, we have 3 members present, which means we have a quorum. Madam Secretary, please mark members present as they arrive. We've got one bill on the agenda today. That is Senate Bill 66, which revises provisions relating to public safety. I will go ahead and invite up the representatives from the Department of Motor Vehicles. And you all can please state your name for the record and get started whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Chair and committee members. Sean Sever from the Nevada DMV. Thank you for letting us present SB 66 to you today. This is a housekeeping bill. It is in response to a federal audit that would keep Nevada's commercial driver's license, CDL, statutes aligned with federal regulations regarding motor carrier safety. The Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration conducted a review of Nevada's legal authority to comply with federal CDL mandates, and a new statute is required that would require a person convicted of certain offenses to be disqualified from operating a commercial motor vehicle for a certain period, including for life, if that individual uses it in the commission of a felony involving a severe form of human trafficking, which is in Section 2. Section 3 requires the court to provide notice to the DMV within 5 days after a person is convicted. Sections 4 and 8 prohibit an employer from allowing a person convicted of certain offenses from operating a commercial vehicle, which includes civil penalties. Section 7 requires the DMV to furnish information to the U.S. Transportation Secretary. Section 9 of the bill addresses commercial motor vehicles stopping at railroad crossings, which gives these provisions more statutory weight than what is in NAC. Sections 10 and 11 revises a list of acts that constitute a crime of holding a person in involuntary servitude and the crimes of coercion to conform more closely with the federal definition. We also have our own friendly amendment that adds upon his or her request to subsection 2 of section 7, which allows the DMV to adhere to federal standards of providing driver information to other states and jurisdictions. The amendment also includes cleanup language that gives the DMV authority to implement and administrate a drug and alcohol clearinghouse through regulations and policy. So in summary, this bill is just cleanup language that will bring the DMV in compliance with FMCSA provisions. We appreciate you considering our request, and we can answer questions at this point.
All right, thank you so much for that presentation. I will ask committee members if they have any questions at this time. We'll start with Senator Hansen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your presentation and our visit earlier today. So the question I got on the amendment, because when you and I discussed it in my office, basically what we're doing is bringing everything up to federal standards. Is there anything in this amendment that is not federal standard? Because it's a little different than the original bill, obviously. So I just want to make sure that what's the motive behind the changes in the law? If it's to comply with federal law, okay, I got it. But is there things that you guys have added in the amendment that is not forced by federal law or required by federal law?
Through the chair to Senator Hansen, Wayne Baumiller for the record. The 2 amendments that we're including, one is to comply with federal law, and the second is to give the department regulational authority to adopt regulations for a drug and alcohol clearinghouse project that is also part of the Code of Federal Regulations.
Okay, I only see one amendment, so I must be missing one. Is there a second one floating around here? No, bill, amendment? Okay,
Sean Sever from the DMV, Senator. It's one amendment, and those 2 items are both in it.
Oh, I see. Same amendment. Okay, got it. Okay, it's a question I had. So most of it's federal, but there are also, you want to set up this clearinghouse for certain specific things that's not federal.
Through the chair to Senator Hansen, Wayne Baumiller for the record, correct.
Thank you.
Senator Pazina.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll admit I had not had a chance to look at the amendment yet. So my initial question was adding trafficking was what would make this comply with federal regulations, but there was nothing else in there in addition to that. It was just the trafficking. Now, I guess with this is a secondary question. With the amendment, it adds the clearinghouse. And were there any federal restrictions also regarding the railroad tracks, or was that just something else that was a part of the bill to make commercial vehicles operate in a safer manner in Nevada?
Through the chair to Senator Pazina.
You can go directly.
Wayne Baumiller for the record. The railroad tracks were added in we had a federal audit, and during the audit, it was said that the state has the authority to set the duration based off Code of Federal Regulations. However, the state did not have all the underlying convictions that we could do to match federal regulations, so they were added to match basically what's in federal regulations to fill that gap, basically.
Thank you so much. And then to confirm, adding in the trafficking component was the only addition to the offenses themselves that was added in, and that was to meet federal standards.
To Senator Pazina, Wayne Baumiller for the record. Yes, that is correct.
Additional questions from members? Okay, I have. Sure. Senator Hansen, go ahead, please.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Well, being an old states' rights guy, I'm kind of wondering what happens if we don't do this as far as, I mean, can the federal government basically punish us if we decide that we don't want to comply with federal regulations?
Thank you for the question, Senator Hansen. Wayne Baumiller for the record, yes, they can. So from what I found out just a few minutes ago is we can have a loss of what's called mix-up funds. I do not know how much those are, but we can also have a loss of federal highway funds, which is 4% for the first year, 8% for the second year, which is tens of millions of dollars. And if we continue to be out of compliance, we could have the whole CDL program decertified for the state, meaning we could not issue CDLs to our constituents.
So much for states' rights, huh? Okay, that's a disappointing answer, to be honest with you, but obviously they have the blackmail effect hanging over us here if we don't do this. Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Hansen, I think this may have to do with the fact that these trucks are driving across country. And so, yeah, there's a bit of interstate commerce, especially with CDLs, just a little bit. Yeah, other questions from committee members? Okay, I have just a couple. Do you know how many individuals have been convicted of these types of crimes in Nevada or maybe even nationally each year? What kind of numbers are we looking at?
To Senator Harris, Wayne Baumiller for the record, I do not. I am not aware of anybody has been convicted yet of this, since we don't have the full definition in statute to convict people of this. We do have the capability at the DMV, but we don't have that full definition.
How would you all envision an employer demonstrating that they're complying with this requirement? Is it simply by performing a standard background check prior to hiring? Question mark.
To Senator Harris, Wayne Baumiller for the record, can you elaborate on the question? Are you talking about the Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse or?
So if you take a look at what is, I guess, Section 4, this is where we have the prohibition on employers, right? They shall not allow, require, permit, or authorize a person to operate. How do they demonstrate that they haven't done that? How do you all envision them demonstrating that they are complying with this section of the bill? You may not call on Paul Enos.
No, we're gonna, Sean Sever from the DMV. We're going to phone a friend from the DMV.
Madam Chair, Thomas Martin for the record, Nevada DMV. Sorry we had to consult real quick. It's been a minute since I've seen this bill in its original state. So long story short is it will be through our normal issuance process at the DMV. We do run driver records checks, criminal activity, et cetera, for citations of this. So like Mr. Bob Miller said, once we get these definitions in place, we'll be able to get those on record and have those defined exactly what the infractions are. As far as the employer specifically, they do driver records checks. Won't speak on behalf of the industry, but we know some companies do it pretty frequently. It'll be on them to basically, for part of their retention, but also their initial hiring through that process as well. So this doesn't really give us the authority to, I guess, enforce that. It'll be on their side and go that route.
All right, Senator Spearman has a question.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So I'm trying to understand. So you said you run the background check. Is that like the NCIC? If you pulled over 28, 29, get the driver's license tags and all that. Is it kind of like that?
Madam Chair, through you to Senator Spearman, this is Thomas Martin again for the record. NCIC, no. So our DMV process is basically a driver record check, but the background check that an employer would use is through the NCIC. So two totally different processes of verifying kind of different paths.
That's what I was wondering about what the employer would
Yes,
use.
ma'am.
Any additional questions from members? Okay. With that, we will open it up for testimony. Anyone here to testify in support of Senate Bill 66? Go ahead and fill the seats. Begin when they're ready.
Good afternoon, Chair Harris, members of the committee. For the record, I'm Paul Enos. I'm the CEO of the Nevada Trucking Association, and we're here today to support Senate Bill 66. This does comport with federal law in terms of human trafficking violation, in terms of railroad crossings, and even when you look at the Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse, that was something that has been in federal law, first implemented in January of 2020. And since then, you've had 166,296 drivers, and this is from the end of last year, test positive for violation. Now, there's a return to duty process that they can go through, and since that has come into effect, we've had about 46,000 drivers who have gone through that return to duty process, which means you go to a DOT certified program. Typically, you're checking at least annually in terms of what the driver's motor vehicle record is. And in the case of the Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse, that's something that would pop up, that driver's in prohibited status. Every DOT company and every driver has their own PIN and their own logon, and so you associate that driver with that company. And if they pop positive on a test, that's going to come up, and that driver's in prohibited status, they can no longer drive. So that's how we check that. In terms of how an employer would verify that, if they are not going and checking those motor vehicle records, every DOT carrier is subject to do a compliance review by the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. And that's something that would come up on an audit. The fine for each violation, I believe, is $11,000 and change. It kind of goes up with, inflation every year. So that is how they would be able to do that and mitigate that. In terms of the human trafficking violations, this was federal law. I I don't know how many convictions there have been, but that is something that I can find out. Nevada Trucking Association for the last decade has partnered with Truckers Against Human Trafficking. Very proud of that partnership. We have trained nationwide over 1.5 million truck drivers to recognize and report the signs of human trafficking. So we do think that this is something that is good. I know these bills tend to come up every legislative session where, we're doing something on the human trafficking front, and this just gets us to comport with federal law. And, in terms of, what does it mean if we don't? $5.2 million in Motor Carrier Safety Administration program funds. Most of that goes to the High Patrol. Portion of that does go to DMV for the management of the CDL program. And as Chair Harris said, absolutely, we want to keep our ability to issue CDLs here in Nevada. And there are some states that do tend to push back. It's happening right now in Montana, so that can be an issue. But thank you very much for the opportunity to testify and hopefully answer some of those questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else here to testify in support of SB 66? Okay, quick visual check in Las Vegas shows there's no one to testify there unless they're hiding in the shadows. Okay. BPS, can we check the phone line, see if there's anyone to testify in support of Senate Bill 66?
Thank you, Chair. The lines are currently open and working, but there's no one to testify at this moment.
Okay, we'll go ahead and open it up down here in Carson then for anyone who wants to testify in opposition to Senate Bill 66. Please go ahead and come up and take your seat. Please remember to state your name for the record.
Thank you, Chair. John Puro for the record, JOHNPIRO from the Clark County Public Defender's Office. We're only taking issue as it is right now with Section 11 of the bill, which expands the definition of coercion, which we think may go just a little bit more than housekeeping on this. But we have talked with the bill sponsors, and we're going to meet with them to see if we can work some things out language-wise here. It would be quite something for it to change the whole definition of coercion, which will have ripple effects throughout the criminal code in a DMV bill without having a full discussion on what that would do to all other areas of criminal law.
Erica Roth, ERICAROTH, on behalf of the Washoe County Public Defender's Office. I echo the sentiments of Mr. Piro. I do appreciate the bill sponsors meeting and speaking with us. So we are in opposition as to Section 11 at this time, but look forward to those conversations. Thank you.
Okay, anyone in Las Vegas to testify in opposition? All right, BPS, will you check the phones, please, if there's anyone who'd like to testify in opposition to Senate Bill 66?
Thank you, Chair. The lines are open and working, but no one is here to testify at this moment.
Thank you so much. We'll go for neutral testimony now. Anyone here in Carson City want to give neutral testimony on Senate Bill 66? Not seeing anyone. Also, still no one in Las Vegas, and I'm going to assume there's no one on the phones, but we'll check anyway. One last time, BPS, please.
Yes, Chair. There are no callers willing to testify at this time.
Okay, unless the sponsors want to make any closing remarks. Sure, Mr. Sever, come on up.
Thank you, Chair. Committee members, Sean Sever from the Nevada DMV. We're, of course, happy to work with anyone on this bill. We are not sure how much wiggle room we have. Our legal staff worked with FMCSA legal staff to match the federal guidelines, but we'll get together with the opponents and see what we can do. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Okay, we'll go ahead and close out the hearing on Senate Bill 66 and head to the last item on our agenda, which is public comment. Anyone here to make public comment? All right, anyone in Las Vegas for public comment? That's a no. Okay, BPS, do we have anybody on the phones who'd like to make public comment at this time?
Thank you, Chair. The public line is open and working, but no one is here to testify at this time.
All right, with that, ladies and gentlemen, we are adjourned. Have a great afternoon.